They called her the help. But when their father died, the waitress inherited everything. And she didn't forgive. She planned. She was just a humble waitress, scraping by, often treated like dirt by the very people she served. But when their billionaire patriarch, Victor Ashcroft, unexpectedly left her everything, his spoiled, entitled children had no idea what was truly coming. This wasn't just about Maya Delgado inheriting a company. It was about her starting a war. A meticulously planned, deliciously executed campaign to dismantle a greedy family and reclaim what was in a twisted way rightfully hers. This is the story of how a kind-hearted woman, pushed to her limits, orchestrated a master plan to take everything they had and make them watch it all slip away. You know, most people imagine a sudden inheritance as some kind of fairy tale ending. Picture it a surprise windfall, a new life, happily ever after. But for Maya Delgado, it was anything but a fairy tale. For her, it was the opening gambit in a chess match she'd been unknowingly playing for years, a game set in motion by a ghost and fueled by a lifetime of quiet indignities. She didn't just want the money, oh no. That would have been too simple. Maya wanted the Ashcroft family, the very people who had spat on her, sneered at her, and dismissed her as the help, to witness every single dollar, every last shred of their inherited privilege vanish into thin air. And more than that, she wanted them to know with absolute certainty that she took it on purpose. Every calculated move, every devastating blow was delivered with intent. This wasn't just about evening the score, it was about rewriting the rules of the game entirely. Let's rewind a bit. Maya was 27, juggling double shifts at a bustling beachfront bistro in Santa Monica. Her apartment. A studio so small most walk-in closets felt more spacious. Tips weren't just a bonus. They were her lifeline, the difference between eating and going hungry, between making rent and facing eviction. Yet despite the grind, kindness was her default setting. It wasn't a performance. It was just who she was. She remembered every regular's birthday, even the grumpy ones, and would often slip a free coffee to the tired cabbies who stopped by in the early hours. Once she even gave her last $20 to a crying college kid who'd lost her wallet, knowing full well it meant she'd be eating ramen for the next few days. It was just in her nature to care, to connect, to see the humanity in everyone, even when they didn't see it in her. Then there were the Ashcrofts. Oh, the Ashcrofts. Old money, oil-rich, and so utterly arrogant, they genuinely seemed to believe the world's rotation depended on their quarterly dividend checks. They were a force of nature, a hurricane of entitlement that swept through the bistro every Friday. And at the eye of that storm was the patriarch, Victor Ashcroft. A billionaire, a widower, and as Maya had subtly observed over the years, a closet insomniac. Every Friday, punctually, he'd occupy table 12, a quiet, almost regal presence, nursing a black coffee and meticulously solving a Sudoku puzzle. The other waitresses, wise to his demanding nature and terse demeanor, would often dodge his table, hoping someone else would draw the short straw. But not Maya. She approached him with the same quiet dignity she extended to everyone else. She kept his cup perpetually full, offered a soft smile, and even let him win the occasional small-talk argument, knowing it cost her nothing, and perhaps gave him a fleeting moment of satisfaction. She never pried, never asked why a man reportedly worth $18 billion looked like he hadn't slept a wink since the last major recession. She just served him, observed him, and treated him like another human being, not a walking ATM. The Ashcroft kids, however, were a different breed entirely. Victor Jr., Celeste, and Logan. They only bothered to grace the bistro with their presence when they needed their allowances topped up, often with an absurd number of fresh zeros. Junior, the eldest, was a walking disaster, having somehow managed to run a hedge fund into the ground despite his father's endless bailouts. Celeste, the middle child, collected divorces, like some people collect stamps, each one more expensive and dramatic than the last. And then there was Logan, the youngest, whose primary talent seemed to be spending 10 grand a night on bottle service, usually leaving a trail of unpaid tabs and broken promises. They called Maya the help to her face, a casual dismissal that stung, but never broke her. They'd snap their fingers for refills as if she were a trained dog, not a person. And Maya, she'd just smile, nod, and pocket their insults, tucking them away in a mental ledger, much like other servers pocketed tips. Each sneer, each condescending remark was a small deposit into an account of simmering resentment, an account they had no idea she was meticulously maintaining. One particular evening, Victor Ashcroft lingered long past closing time. The bistro was empty save for Maya, who was methodically mopping the floors, the rhythmic swish of the mop a counterpoint to the quiet hum of the refrigerators. He motioned her over his voice, a raspy whisper that seemed to carry the weight of years. "If life ever gives you power," he imparted, his gaze surprisingly intense, "use it like a scalpel, not a hammer." Maya, caught off guard, actually laughed, a soft, genuine sound. It struck her as profoundly ironic, almost witty advice coming from a man who famously or infamously had blitz-acquired 3 rival firms over a single brutal brunch meeting. He then did something entirely unexpected. He left her a $20,000 tip in crisp $100 bills along with a business card. On it, in elegant, understated script, it simply read, "Remember the scalpel." 2 weeks later, the news broke. Victor Ashcroft was found dead in his opulent study. Heart failure, according to the official press releases. Suicide, according to the coroner's private memo. A detail that Maya would only learn much later. The Ashcroft family, true to form, didn't mourn. They howled for the will like a pack of ravenous wolves baying at a full moon, their greed eclipsing any semblance of grief. The day of the will reading was a spectacle. It took place in a mahogany-paneled law office, thick with the scent of old paper, expensive leather, and even older money. The Ashcroft children were there, radiating an air of smug expectation. Junior, ever the corporate climber, practically had his name etched onto the chairman's seat already. Celeste, the self-proclaimed aesthete, was already mentally curating the art foundation she expected to inherit. And Logan, bless his simple heart, just wanted his quarterly allowance tripled, perhaps quadrupled, to fund his increasingly extravagant lifestyle. They sat there preening, utterly convinced of their divine right to Victor's vast fortune. Then the lawyer, a stoic man with an air of practiced solemnity, cleared his throat. The room fell silent, save for the rustle of expensive suits. He didn't distribute multiple envelopes as they all expected. Instead, he slid a single, unassuming envelope across the polished table. Victor Ashcroft, he announced, had bequeathed every single share of Ashcroft Holdings, a staggering $4.7 billion empire, to Maya Delgado, the only person who never asked me for anything. Silence. A stunned, suffocating silence that stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then the screams erupted, a cacophony of outrage, disbelief, and pure, unadulterated fury. Maya, still in her worn diner uniform, having been summoned to this surreal gathering, thought she'd misheard. She hadn't. Her hands trembled, a nervous tremor that was half fear, half an electric jolt of adrenaline. The lawyer, unfazed by the Ashcroft family's histrionics, calmly explained an addendum. A cruel, brilliant twist. If Maya refused the inheritance, everything, every last penny would funnel directly to an animal rescue charity in Belize. The Ashcroft family would get precisely zilch. Nothing. Nada. Maya, her mind reeling, looked from the lawyer to the apoplectic faces of the Ashcrofts. The choice was stark, terrifying, and exhilarating. She picked up the pen. She signed. Cameras flashed, blinding her for a moment. Headlines erupted across every major news outlet within the hour. The waitress had inherited a fortune. That night, Maya found herself utterly alone in Victor's sprawling 12,000-square-foot mansion. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the distant hum of the estate's sophisticated climate control. She wandered through vast, echoing rooms past a wall adorned with Picassos that to her untrained eye honestly looked indistinguishable from IKEA prints. The sheer scale of the wealth was overwhelming, almost suffocating. She could walk away from all of it, she thought, sell the stock cash out, disappear to Fiji, and never look back. The temptation was immense, a siren song of freedom and anonymity. But then something tugged at her. A faint memory of Victor's raspy voice, a flash of his knowing eyes. She found herself drawn to his study, to the massive mahogany desk where he had spent his last moments. Hesitantly, she opened a desk drawer, almost expecting it to be empty. Instead, nestled among a few old fountain pens, was a second envelope addressed simply to Maya. Inside, she found a small, sleek flash drive ominously labeled "Scalpel," and a note penned in Victor's distinctive, elegant hand. It read, "They'll devour you unless you devour them first. I taught you the taste of power, now cook the feast." Maya laughed. Then a wild, unhinged peal of laughter that echoed through the silent mansion until her ribs ached. It wasn't just a laugh of relief or triumph. It was a laugh of profound, unsettling understanding. Victor hadn't just handed her money. He'd handed her permission. A cold, calculated blessing for what he knew she would have to do. She wasn't just a lucky waitress anymore. She was a general armed with an army of shares, a blueprint for revenge, and a mandate from the grave. The next month was a blur of intense, solitary study. Maya devoured financial reports, legal documents, and corporate structures, her mind, accustomed to memorizing daily specials and customer preferences, now focused on the intricate weaknesses of the Ashcroft empire. She learned that Junior's hedge fund wasn't just struggling, it was leveraged 30-1 on highly volatile Russian junk bonds, a single margin call away from catastrophic collapse. Celeste's newest art foundation wasn't a philanthropic endeavor. It was a sophisticated money laundering front for a shadowy Qatari prince who preferred his illicit cash laundered under the guise of priceless antiquities. And Logan's trendy crypto exchange. It existed almost entirely to wash his friend's drug profits, a digital laundromat for dirty money. What was truly astonishing was that all three siblings were technically trustees of the family foundation, and all three had been skimming off the top, systematically siphoning funds for their own selfish pursuits. Victor, it turned out, had known everything. He had meticulously documented every single transgression, every fraudulent scheme, every act of betrayal. And then, with a final posthumous act of poetic justice, he had handed the detonator to Maya. She didn't work alone, of course. A general needs her lieutenants. She quietly recruited Victor's longtime chauffeur, a man named Arthur, who had spent decades chauffeuring the Ashcroft family and consequently had heard far too much. Arthur, a man of quiet loyalty and even quieter disdain for the Ashcroft children, became her eyes and ears. Then there was Sarah, the company's head of compliance, a brilliant, principled woman who had been systematically sidelined and ignored for years because she dared to warn Victor about his children's illicit activities. Sarah, fueled by a desire for corporate integrity and a quiet fury, became Maya's strategic advisor. And finally, she tapped into a hacker collective, a motley crew of brilliant misfits who owed Maya a few favors, ever since she'd regularly slipped them free pie during their late-night 3 a.m. coding binges at the bistro. They became her digital assassins. The plan was simple, brutal, and elegant, just like Victor's scalpel. Step 1, call an emergency board meeting a dramatic stage for the unfolding chaos. Step 2, leak Junior's fund exposure to the most aggressive short sellers in the market, ensuring a swift and merciless financial implosion. Step 3, sit back, watch the vultures circle, and let the Ashcroft family tear themselves apart. The emergency board meeting was, to put it mildly, a bloodbath. Maya, with a chilling calmness that belied her past, had arranged for the entire proceedings to be live-streamed to a private, encrypted channel she wryly dubbed Scalpel TV. Junior Ashcroft arrived radiating his usual arrogant confidence, fully expecting a round of applause, perhaps even a promotion for simply existing. He left watching his hedge fund's positions implode in real time, his face draining of color with every plummeting stock ticker displayed on the boardroom's massive screen. By lunchtime, his investors, smelling blood in the water, had pulled out en masse. Creditors, swift and unforgiving, were already seizing his yacht, his private jet, and half his art collection. CNBC, with its characteristic flair for drama, ran a chyron that scrolled relentlessly across the bottom of the screen. Ashcroft heir down 400 bows before dessert. Maya, newly appointed as interim CEO by a terrified board, looked at Junior, a ghost of his former self, and with a voice as steady as steel, voted to revoke his family seat, citing an egregious breach of fiduciary duty. The board, a collection of powerful individuals suddenly very fond of self-preservation, quickly and unanimously agreed. Celeste was next, and she tried a different approach charm. She invited Maya to a power brunch, all forced smiles and designer Chanel. Over plates of overpriced vegan croissants and artisanal avocado toast, she offered a truce. "Let's be reasonable, darling," she purred, her voice dripping with faux sincerity. "We split the fortune 50-50, keep the vultures away, and maintain the family legacy." Maya listened every syllable, recorded on a discreet device hidden in her purse. She nodded, smiled, and then, excusing herself to powder her nose, she slipped away. Moments later, she emerged not in the ladies' room but live on Instagram, her phone held aloft. She played the audio clip of Celeste's truce, offer her voice calm as she exposed the raw, transactional nature of Celeste's legacy proposal. Hashtags like #CharityFraud and #CelesteTheCon trended globally within minutes. By sundown, the IRS, prompted by an anonymous tip, courtesy of Sarah, opened a full-scale inquiry into Celeste's art foundation. By midnight, Interpol, following the hacker collective's digital breadcrumbs, had seized forged export certificates for her so-called charity artifacts. Celeste, in a desperate last-ditch effort to flee, was flagged at LAX, attempting to board a private jet disguised in a Gucci headscarf and sunglasses the size of satellite dishes. Paparazzi, alerted by another anonymous tip, got the shot capturing her humiliated face for the world to see. Logan, the youngest and wildest of the Ashcroft brood, went for brute force as expected. He retaliated with a clumsy but aggressive cyber attack, hacking Maya's email and flooding Ashcroft Holdings' servers with ransomware. His text to her was filled with crude threats: "Transfer 300 mil or every file burns." Maya's response was swift and chillingly precise. She sent him a single screenshot, his private crypto wallet key. She'd siphoned his entire digital stash, every ill-gotten coin, to an escrow account controlled by Victor's old, unswervingly loyal security team. Logan, in a panic, raced to his clandestine data center housed in a converted pool house. He found the doors chained shut, a bright yellow post-it note emblazoned with a simple, stark message: "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes." As he stared, bewildered police cars pulled up, sirens wailing. Someone, another anonymous tip, of course, had alerted them to the unlicensed crypto exchange operating out of his pool house. His arrest, a flailing, indignant spectacle, was live-streamed by a dozen news helicopters hovering overhead, commentators applauding the swift justice as if it were the Super Bowl. 3 heirs. 3 spectacular, humiliating downfalls, all within a single brutal week. The stock price of Ashcroft Holdings wobbled for a moment, then astonishingly soared. Turns out markets really do like a good house cleaning. Employees who had cowered for years under the Ashcroft children's nepotism and abuse of power now flooded Maya's inbox with thank-you gifts and messages of support. One particularly creative soul even sent her a donut box shaped like a scalpel, complete with tiny edible surgical tools. Maya laughed so hard she snorted coffee, a genuine, unburdened laugh that felt foreign yet utterly liberating. But the victory, for all its sweetness, tasted metallic. The adrenaline rush that had carried Maya through the week was dissipating, leaving her hollowed out and utterly exhausted. She hadn't slept in 48 hours, the weight of her actions pressing down on her. As she walked the cavernous halls of the mansion, the echoes of Victor's last words seemed to reverberate in her mind. Scalpel, not hammer. Had she used precision surgical strikes against corruption? Or had she, in her righteous fury, swung an axe in every direction, causing collateral damage she hadn't anticipated? The lines between justice and revenge, between dismantling and destroying, were blurring. She found herself back in Victor's study, drawn by an unseen force. Her gaze fell upon a heavy, ornate safe previously unnoticed. With a combination Arthur had provided, the heavy door swung open, revealing not stacks of cash or jewels, but a single unassuming envelope, inside a faded photograph. It showed Victor younger, with a slight, almost wistful smile, sitting at a diner booth. Across from him, a teenage girl, her eyes bright, her smile crooked and infectious. Maya froze. The girl in the photo. She wore Maya's face, the same eyes, the same distinctive, slightly crooked smile. On the back, in Victor's familiar script, were words that shattered her world. "My daughter given up for protection. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her power is only sweet when shared." Maya's knees buckled. The photograph slipped from her trembling fingers, fluttering to the plush carpet. The man she had so meticulously outmaneuvered post-mortem, the strategic genius who had handed her the tools of her revenge, wasn't just a benefactor. He was her biological father. The inheritance wasn't some random act of generosity, some whimsical twist of fate. It was restitution. Every cruel joke, every condescending remark, every finger snap the Ashcroft kids had hurled at her had unknowingly been aimed at their own sister. She wasn't just dismantling a dynasty. She was reclaiming a birthright, a legacy they had squandered with their greed and entitlement. The revelation should have felt like the ultimate triumph, the final, perfect piece of the puzzle. Instead, it felt like grief. A profound, aching grief for a father she never knew, for a childhood stolen, and for the cold, hard realization that the scalpel had cut far deeper than she could have ever imagined, leaving an emotional wound that might never heal. She could have stopped. Oh, she really could have. The Ashcroft family was utterly ruined, their lives in tatters. Junior was facing a looming SEC indictment, his reputation and fortune irrevocably destroyed. Celeste's assets were frozen, her fraudulent empire exposed, her social standing a joke. Logan, in his ankle bracelet purgatory, was likely going to be giving tech tutorials in federal prison, a fittingly ironic punishment for his digital crimes. They were broken, humiliated, and utterly powerless. The revenge, by any measure, was complete. But Maya remembered. She remembered the sting of humiliation, the silent tears shed in the walk-in closet-sized studio. She remembered each casual dismissal, every time they'd called her the help, as if she were less than human. And then she remembered Victor's note, "Power is only sweet when shared." The revelation of her parentage had shifted everything. This wasn't just about vengeance anymore. It was about legacy. Her legacy. Victor's legacy. A legacy that transcended mere wealth and touched upon true justice, real empowerment. At the very next shareholder meeting, a tense affair, still reeling from the recent upheavals, Maya, with a new quiet authority, stood before the board. She didn't gloat, didn't grandstand. Instead, she live-streamed a proposal that would shake the corporate world to its core. She proposed converting a staggering 60% of Ashcroft holdings into a perpetual employee ownership trust, ensuring that the people who built the company with their sweat and dedication would now own a significant stake in its future. Another 30% would be dedicated to global renewable energy grants, a monumental investment in a sustainable future, addressing the very source of the Ashcroft family's original oil-rich fortune. And for herself, she would retain a mere 10%, enough to live comfortably, certainly, but not enough to hoard, not enough to become another Victor, or worse, another Ashcroft child. She opened the floor for discussion, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces in the room. A moment of silence. Then thunderous applause erupted, genuine and heartfelt. The board, still dizzy from the recent scandals and acutely aware of the shifting power dynamics, rubber-stamped her proposal. Financial pundits, scrambling to make sense of the unprecedented move, called it the most radical corporate decapitation in modern history. On social media, Twitter crowned her #Robin Hood CEO a modern legend, born from the ashes of an old empire. The Ashcroft kids watched it all unfold from their respective confinements. Junior pale and gaunt from his sprawling mansion under house arrest. Celeste chain-smoking from a dingy rented studio apartment, her designer clothes now looking tragically out of place. Logan sullen and restless from his ankle bracelet purgatory, pacing the confines of his parents' guest house. They had to see her face on every screen, hear analysts praise the very shares they once treated as mere allowance tokens. Maya didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Instead, she simply sent each sibling a care package. Inside instant coffee, a Sudoku book, and a single printed note. "Some of us earned the scalpel," it read. "Learn to live without the hammer." It was a final, elegant cut, a lesson delivered with surgical precision. Maya Delgado never waited tables again, of course. But she did keep the uniform carefully framed and displayed in a quiet corner of her new, surprisingly modest office. It served as a constant, poignant reminder that kindness isn't weakness, not ever. It's often a down payment on destiny, a quiet investment in a future you can't yet see. Victor's scalpel lesson, once a cryptic whisper, became corporate folklore within Ashcroft Holdings, now rebranded under a new, more egalitarian name. The mantra was clear: power cuts cleanest when guided by the memory of every scar you almost took home in a doggy bag. The employees, now owners, walked with a new spring in their step, their faces alight with pride because they literally owned the product of their sweat, their ingenuity, their hard work. And somewhere on a quiet Santa Monica pier, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, a street musician played a soulful tune. In his open guitar case, nestled among a few crumpled bills, lay an anonymous check. It was for a considerable sum, signed simply, "From the waitress who remembered your song." Because once you've taken everything from the greedy, once you've truly dismantled the structures of injustice, the only luxury left, the only true power is giving it back, one scalpel slice at a time. So if you woke up tomorrow with $1 billion company in your lap, a gift from an unexpected benefactor, what would you do? Would you spare the people who stepped on you, the ones who made your life a living hell? Or would you take everything they love, slowly, legally, deliciously? Drop your ultimate revenge plan in the comments below. And if you think justice tastes like coffee and croissants with a side of sweet, sweet vindication, smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories where the underdog doesn't just bite back. They buy the kennel.